Hello, this is called Why. It's about the Trinity Bible. Why did I translate the Trinity Bible? My name is Nigel Dixon and I'm reading section 20, and this is called History of the Bible. I dedicate this word-for-word literal translation of the Bible to the memory of William Tyndale, father of the English Reformation. He translated word for word from the Reformation text of the Protestant Reformers. He abandoned the texts from Alexandria, rejected by mainstream Christianity, but underlying the Latin Vulgate and modern translations. Tyndale was strangled and burnt at the stake on the orders of Sir St. Thomas More, but not for translating word for word into English. Though the medieval church authorities hated his translation, earlier English translations had been made, but from the Latin Vulgate translation. Tyndale started a revolution. Europe had never seen the original Greek text of the New Testament or the Old Testament Hebrew text. Why? Because the Roman Church had the lock on Europe. It had crushed Celtic Christianity based on the teaching of the rest of worldwide mainstream Christianity. And the Roman Church imposed its own Bible, a Latin translation from texts in Alexandria that mainstream Christianity had rejected. And the Latin text was the only Bible that the Roman Church allowed Europe to see. Tyndale's crime in the eyes of the Roman Catholic Inquisition was to use the wrong text. Wrong. All the reformers concluded that the Reformation text is the received text that was preserved by mainstream Orthodox Christians for 1,500 years, that went way back to the first century congregation at Antioch. That was why all the reformers rejected the Alexandrian text and refused to translate them. Tyndale caused scandal by replacing medieval church jargon with words translated word for word from the received text. The Roman Bible, the Vulgate, was propaganda to justify Roman concepts of a pyramid structure of Christian leadership. But Tyndale replaced the word priest with elder, and he replaced the word church with the word congregation. More accurate translations of the original Greek text. The Vulgate blended translation with interpretation from a medieval European way of thinking. That same blending process distorts modern Bible versions. The key difference between the Roman Church and mainstream worldwide Christianity was not over who Jesus is, but over who we are. In America and Europe, we have a pyramid concept of church, a belief that church is a physical building we invite people to, and a belief that someone is in authority over us to prevent us from evangelizing without permission outside the program. Evangelizing outside the program. That is program church. So we are dying. Our nations are sliding into slavery to all kinds of debauchery because we will not open our mouths to proclaim Jesus Christ and Him crucified. Why? Because our concept of church is Roman Catholic, straight from the Vulgate Bible that the Western Church is brainwashed by ever since the 4th century. And incidentally, that's what the new translations are bringing back. As Peter says, also you are built up as living stones, a spiritual house, a set-apart priesthood, to offer up spiritual sacrifices acceptable to God through Jesus Anointed. You are a chosen generation, a governing priesthood, a set-apart nation, an acquired people. My goal is to build on the foundation Tyndale laid, and I look forward to a fresh wave of biblical reformation across all peoples who speak English as their first or second language. I replace conceptual words that have come from the medieval European church with ordinary English words. For example, baptism is submerging. Church is called out. Christ is anointed. The Protestant Reformation followed 50 years after the fall of Constantinople to the forces of Islam in 1453 AD. That devastation of Christianity out east meant a flood of Greek refugees into Europe, Orthodox Christians, and many of the Bible texts preserved by mainstream Orthodox Christianity arrived in Europe for the first time. Suddenly, Christians had access to Bible texts in the original Greek language, instead of the Latin Vulgate translation that Jerome wrote in 382 AD. Throughout the medieval period, there was no study of the original Hebrew and Greek texts by Christians in the West. The Vulgate version was the only Bible translation authorized by the medieval church in Europe. The Douay-Rheims Bible and the modern-day Jerusalem Bible are the official Roman Catholic second-hand English translations from the Vulgate version that is itself a Latin translation of the Alexandrian text. Second-hand, not translated from the Greek. The fall of Constantinople resulted in huge numbers of refugees who were Greek and who only knew the New Testament in its original language of Greek. Some of these refugees were Bible scholars, and they brought with them Bible texts that the church out east had followed faithfully since they were written during between 50 and 85 AD. These texts were copied by successive generations of transcribers in an unbroken line. These refugees taught the Greek New Testament to people like John Colet. John Colet started to teach directly from the Bible, and he rejected medieval church thinking. Colet's passion was to see ordinary people live lives based on the teaching of the Bible. Colet founded St. Paul's School in London to shape a new generation of young men in a biblical mindset. Colet's Bible teaching found a willing hearer, Erasmus, which means beloved in Greek. He came to England in 1499 so he could hear Colet's Bible teaching and come under his influence. Colet was preaching at that time in the only place where you could lawfully preach, outside in the open air in the United Kingdom. And that was on the steps of St. Paul's Cathedral in the city of London. It was because of Colet's preaching and the passion for the Word of God that Colet imparted to him that Erasmus embarked on 3 years of night and day study of Greek, so he could read the original Greek New Testament in Greek for himself. In 1516, Erasmus published Europe's first Greek New Testament. Europe had been proselytized by the Roman Catholic Church using the Vulgate Latin translation. Europe had never had the Bible in its original language. Erasmus brought out this edition because he did not have any one complete New Testament text in Greek at that time. But he did have several incomplete texts available to him at that time. Later he found more texts.